This year, lab-grown meat also entered people's radar as the initial rounds of approval for safety were rolling out, and I did have a hot take around why I think lab-grown meat is not going to succeed, and it wasn't actually around safety. Claim of it being more ethical or more sustainable meat that's grown in a lab rather than meat that is taken from animal is quite questionable, because to grow cells in a flask or in a metal vat like these startups are claiming to do, both labor intensive, resource intensive in terms of the energy required to run those metal vats, those incubators, the chemicals needed to keep those cells alive. All of that takes so much energy and planning and troubleshooting and experimenting. These are startups after all, so many of them will fail, especially when the reagents are so expensive. I don't think you can make the claim that it's actually better or more sustainable. It looks like chicken and smells like chicken. Will it take off? Because you can invest all this money and make oodles of this meat, but if consumers don't view it as the same, they won't be willing to partake, and that industry, that sector will never have enough capital to be able to take it to the next level. Was it a hot take or was it just reality? Everyone was very curious about what it would taste like, or what it's covered in, or is it going to be the start of the zombie apocalypse? It's probably going to be relatively safe, all things considered. It's just amino acids, it's just cultured in a dish, but really there's no crazy chemicals in it. My take on it was it's going to be too expensive. Culturing cells in a lab costs thousands and thousands of dollars. For it to become scalable so you can buy a burger that's made of lab cultured meat, that is still very, very far into the future, as this article from Just Food really highlights. The road to lab grown meat's mass commercialization remains a very long one. The nascent cultivated meat industry is slow because investor appetite and geopolitical instability hampers efforts to commercialize the products on a wider scale. Despite the investment in this sector, where they've driven the cost of that patty down to £9 or $9, whatever it is, the cost of a patty being close to $10 wherever you may be in the world, that's too expensive. And if you then add on top of it, hey, this is lab cultured meat, those are not a good combination for economic sustainability. Demand drives innovation. I'm just not sure the consumers have a demand for it. Industry will be challenged to deliver sales to consumers and to stretch funding runways to the point of delivering profitability. And these cultivated meat businesses will watch the plant-based meat market carefully, because I've seen plant-based meat really roll out in a scalable way this year. In 2024, I'm wondering if that lab-cultured meat sector will come out. All the signs are pointing to this becoming more regular, certainly in Australia. According to the Australian Business Journal, the food safety regulator in that country says meat grown from cells is safe to eat. Sydney-based company Vow has passed the first stage needed to sell the meat to consumers. According to the food regulator, Food Standards Australia and New Zealand, eating the cultured quail meat presents no health or nutritional risk. It is genetically stable and bacteria-related risks were very low. But they did highlight the need to put cell cultured on the labeling, and that is where I think it's going to fall down based on all the comments or the tractions videos I've made on lab-grown meat. People are just terrified of lab-grown meat, so labeling it will be probably the first death knell. I'm willing to give it a go. I've got very limited qualms about the safety of it, but I just don't think it will taste the same. That need for the meat to grow in an animal with all of the microbiome or the bacteria in its gut, that kind of marinates the meat naturally, and it's very hard to replicate the flavor profile of these meats, but I'm sure all the innovation will make it a little bit more sustainable. I'm not a cheerleader or a naysayer. I'm just a bit of a skeptic. I'm very reluctant to believe this will become a marketable solution in big fast food burger chains. But hey, you never say never, because there are other positive benefits if this does become a player in the meat market. This article from Time makes the case for lab-grown meat. In September 2019, Russian cosmonaut Oleg Skripochka was wearing a white t-shirt and clutching an orange box. Inside that box had cells from a cow blasted into orbit, mixing them with a nutrient soup and adding the mixture into a 3D bioprinter, and they were about to print the first cultivated beef steak ever to be produced in space. They were trying to prove cultivated meat can be produced anytime, anywhere, in any condition. Upside Foods and Good Meat is now able to offer lab-grown meat to the nation's restaurant tables and eventually supermarket shelves. And there's a big opportunity here. Demand will drive innovation. This animal-based meat industry is worth $1.4 trillion, but that also has the indirect, or rather direct impact that it releases greenhouse gas emissions from meat, whether it be the animals and their own methane from just living and growing, or the factories needed to process the meat and ship the meat. And the hope is that cultivated meat could secure 10% of the meat market by 2030 and hopefully as much as 35% by 2040. They're hoping that cultivated meat could become the renewable energy equivalent of the food sector, having the power to charge consumers' plate with meat, but without the downsides. Hopefully in the future it becomes indistinguishable from animal meat. It could offer the same taste and convenience, eventually at a lower price. Again, right now, that is not a lower price. It is $10 for a patty, €10, £10 for a patty. Not very affordable. Hopefully that comes down to $1 or $2. Cultured meat could present the ability to reduce consumption of conventional meat without taking anything away. I think my batting average is not too bad this year. Not quite 100%, but I'm getting maybe 60-70% in terms of my predictions. There will be some shift in the content strategy for this channel, for this podcast in 2024, but what won't change is the consistency that I'll be delivering the podcast. Maybe I'll miss a week here or there if I get sick, but the plan is to be consistently in your feeds every Monday morning. I have also launched another YouTube channel around the intersections of photography and mental health, Bokeh Therapy, Bokeh, linked in the show notes below, and you can find that video linked here, as well as all of the episodes of the Biolab Collective with Jack Wang podcast from 2023. I'm Jack. Hope to connect with you again in 2024.